And that, of course, is Bud's creation, or the way Bud would think of it, in working with Halby Brown, co-creation of our adventure program. Now, there are some adventure people back there, the peanut gallery. Adventure people, make some noise. So, what we do to this day in adventure really began, there were some predecessor programs, of course, but Bud really put it together after 5 years, setting a record, 5 years of being a VC, the leader of a village of Lenape, now Peekamoose. 5 summers, he decided to create the Catskill Explorers program in 1968, and then working with Halby Brown, created our adventure program. And by the time we got to the early 70s, when Bud was our first adventure director, or adventure camp director, a position that, is Zach still here, a position that Zach himself held. There's been a number of people, but Bud was the first. He was the first. And by the early 70s, I think it was in 72 or 73, somebody counted the number of meals that were being served in association with our summer camp. And that summer we hit a peak of hiking trips, backpacking trips, canoeing trips, and bicycle trips, such that 1/3 of the meals that were being served to campers and staff in camp were being served out of camp. That is a lot. That is a lot. Bud came to represent for the staff and the campers the idea of challenging yourself intensely, and at the same time of learning how to stop and smell the flowers. Yeah, that was a 1960s mode. You're thinking, okay, everybody did that in the 60s. But Bud, for many of us, epitomized that alternative attitude about the world. We came here for that. Many of the people who are here at this table and some other table, we came for that. And we lived all year for being here in the summers. Frank Rutan's favorite Bud quote from those years, quote, and Bud will probably deny this, but this is what Frank says was said, quote, "College is just filler between summers at camp." Bud's looking at me. John Mumford, who was a camper on that very first Catskill Explorers group in 1968, who can't be here today because John, partly under the influence of Bud and those adventure programs, became a geologist, and he is 60 miles off the coast of Texas in the Gulf of Mexico trying to save it, wrote me the other day, quote, "We all thought Bud was really cool when on the evening before we left on our 8-day hike, he brought his record player and strobe light to Pigeon Lodge, and we listened to whatever he was into in 1968. That music set us up for the radicalism of leaving camp and hiking. It was immensely great to see the Catskills outside of camp, and the things that Bud taught me on that trip, my first backpacking trip, was the start of many, many more such trips to come for the rest of my life. Thank you, Bud, for giving me that gift." The other day I was writing about Bud, and I heard some adventure campers come back from the Adirondacks, and they were making a lot of noise about how great it was, and I wrote the following at that moment. "As we induct Bud into the Hall of Fame, there are numerous legacies to consider. Perhaps the one he himself most cherishes is that symbolized by all the past and present Frost Valley-sponsored journeys to the Adirondacks. Bud has always believed that when one has intrepidly ventured that far into the wilderness, one crosses over into a new sort of human experience and appreciation for the still, to use one of Bud's favorite words, pristine, the still pristine earth around us, sensing the power and beauty to which we can learn to adapt, small things developing into great ones. Bud told me," John Giannotti recently recalled, John is here, right there. "Bud told me," John said, "that he took his ADK campers to one of the headwater streams of the Hudson, and he'd have them jump over this little stream, and only then would he tell them that they had jumped over the mighty Hudson River." That was Bud. That is Bud. Bud was never into gigantic changes like the rest of us in the 60s and 70s were. He was always about taking one step at a time. But the difference is that for many of us, taking one step at a time is just a metaphor. For Bud, I think it's a metaphor, but for Bud, it's literal. It was literal. Bud felt that the thing we needed to do was to take one step at a time. Leave the hyper-complexity of the noise of what the world seems to consist of and find somewhere that you've never been. And take one step at a time, and then the steps add up. And then, and this is for you, adventure people, and then look around and see where you've gotten to. Some high up place, some remote place, some place with a view of where you've just been. And breathe it in, and love it, and love the people who have been willing to take the journey with you. And sometimes sing with them. Bud's voice is so-so, but he loved, that's supposed to be funny. Sometimes he was in tune. I have so many memories, and so many people here came to honor Bud, have these memories of sitting around with some of the people here and others, sometimes around a campfire, sometimes in a cabin, sometimes in the castle where we weren't supposed to be, sometimes at old John's house, the orchard house, sometimes at the White House, now called the group home, sometimes in a lean-to, sometimes at the top of a mountain, and sing songs Bud liked, songs of the 60s that celebrated getting off the beaten path, finding new ways of being with the land. One of these songs was Tom Paxton's Can't Help But Wonder Where I'm Bound. We played it and sang it many times. This summer I've been telling a story to all the villages that would be willing to listen to it, and that's most of them, a story called The 6 Legends of Bud Cox. I have my t-shirt here. And the end of that story, the kids sing the song with me. So I want to end by telling you, I'm not singing it, but you'll see there's a little singing to come, reading 2 verses that really make me think of Bud. The second verse of the song goes like this. I've been wandering through this land, doing the best I can, trying to find what I was meant to do. And the people that I see look as worried as can be, and it looks like they are wandering too. And the last verse, which gets me every time, and it's moving to me to have the kids in 2023 singing this in honor of Bud. I can never hear this verse without thinking of my friend, our beloved, mythic, iconic, legendary honoree. Well, if you see me passing by, and you sit and wonder why, and you wish that you were a rambler too, nail your shoes to the kitchen floor, lace them up and bar the door, and thank the Lord for the roof that's over you. Bud, will you come up and get this plaque, please? Bud Cox. Look at that, Bud. For his historic engagement with every level of program and project at Camp Wawayanda and Frost Valley across 8 decades. For his brilliant and persistent vision leading to the creation and sustenance of our adventure program. For his unwavering belief in the life-changing power and possibility of a child's experience pushing hard up a mountain and sleeping under the stars. For the uniquely positive influence he has had on the lives of thousands of people who have hiked with him, sung with him, been joyously led by him. Henry Bud Cox is hereby inducted into the Frost Valley Hall of Fame, August 12th, 2023. Bud Cox.
So if you see Al sometime today, ask him about the camping trip on top of Tabletop Mountain. One fine April day when we had 2 feet of unpredicted snow. So I'll be happy to tell you about that story. I was told to give a short speech. I can make it a lot longer if you'd like to hear about the Frost Valley history. We might have to spend the night. 2023 is my 70th year at Wawayanda and Frost Valley. People often ask me why I stayed at Wawayanda and Frost Valley for 70 years. There's a very simple explanation. When summer camp ended in 1954, Mom and Dad forgot to pick me up. There is a second reason. It cost my parents $40 to send me to camp in 1954 for 13 days. That's $3.07 a day. What a bargain. It was more economical for my parents to leave me at camp. Charles Scott was the first Wawayanda director from 1901 to 1921. Charles Scott lived in a wall tent with his wife, 2 kids, and a newborn infant. The same type of wall tent the Wawayanda campers lived in. Mr. Scott felt his family should live just like the Wawayanda campers, no special treatment. In 1922, he traveled throughout the world promoting the establishment of YMCA camps. He kept very neat, very accurate, very detailed records of Camp Wawayanda and his worldly adventures. Since 1921, Charles Scott was always involved with Wawayanda until he died, August 3rd, 1954, while eating lunch with the boys in the dining hall. I was one of those boys. It occurred to me several years ago that between Mr. Scott and myself, we have Wawayanda's entire 123-year history covered. I was a Wawayanda camper for 8 years. I was also a Camp Dudley camper. Camp Dudley is an all-boys camp on Lake Champlain in the Adirondacks. There's hope for the girls. They have a girls' camp started in 2006. It's in Vermont. About 15 years ago, I discovered that Camp Dudley and Camp Wawayanda were one and the same camp from 1885 until 1901. Dudley and Wawayanda are brother camps. Frost Valley's YMCA's fascinating history spans 139 years, 1885 to date. Frost Valley's history includes numerous amazing individuals, devoted families, and hundreds of very supportive board members. Many individuals were on the board for over 30 years. Frost Valley's history is a real plus. It's a fascinating story that needs to be told. It's Frost Valley's history and the amazing people that are part of that history that keeps me at Frost Valley. Frost Valley's biggest program area is not environmental education. It's not the conference center. It's not summer camp. The above brings in the money. Our natural beauty brings in the guests. Can you name any nonprofit organization that has more natural or a bigger backyard than Frost Valley YMCA? Every effort must be made to enhance our natural beauty. It's Frost Valley's natural beauty that keeps me at Frost Valley. In my mind, there is nothing more rewarding than to hear from a former camper that the cabin group that you guided or the trip that you led greatly enhanced the quality of the camper's life. Frost Valley gives you the opportunity to enhance lives. Nothing is more rewarding than to be a positive influence in another person's life. It's the opportunity to better a person's life that keeps me at Frost Valley. Thank you for making me part of Frost Valley's 139-year history.